Oh, I love this. It's National Camera Day, the perfect day to get outside and take some beautiful pictures, pictures that we would love to showcase in our Windows to Colorado. So how can you take the perfect picture? Photographer John Fielder here with some tips for us this morning. Always good to have you here.
Thank you,
Your
Natalie.
pictures that we showcase here throughout our studio are so magnificent. Love your books. You've done so much, but we want to cut to some basics today to give people some real life tips, because we have a lot of people who they've got the fancy cameras. They don't always have the tips to take the perfect picture, though.
Well, yeah, it's a complex thing, the digital world, so I try to cut people to the chase and make it easy for them. But compositionally, you know, we were talking about horizons before. Subject matter, where do you put grandmother in the photo? Do you put her in the middle? No. And you know, like horizons, every photo can be analyzed in terms of dividing lines. So if you put grandmother in the middle, you split the photograph in half symmetrically, and that's not a good thing. Put grandmother to the left or the right, and you know, the rule of thirds, everybody's heard of that, and make what we call asymmetrical design.
Okay, that's tip number one.
See the goat. Goat's grandmother, as a matter of fact.
Okay, so goat grandmother there, not necessarily right in the middle, and isn't that beautiful? The next tip you have, create depth in your scene. What do you mean by that? How can people use that?
We humans have two eyes most of the time, so we perceive distance from front to back. Standing on the top of a peak, we get a tingle in our toes as we look down 5,000 feet. Cameras have one eye, one lens, and it's two-dimensional process by nature. So how do we emulate that? We do it by getting very close to flowers in the foreground, making them look bigger than they really are in relation to what's in the background. And by doing that, you create a sense of distance from front to back. In the case of that waterfall, it's a lead-in line. So roads, trails, creeks draw the viewer from the bottom of the photo to typically the middle. Again, emulating three-dimensional view with a two-dimensional process.
Okay, next let's talk about the bells, the buttons, and the whistles. This is a problem that I have because there is so much in today's camera, like the picture we're looking at here. Most people don't know, but the average person, unless you're a professional, what all of that means.
There's only about 5 things mechanically you really need to think about to make good photos, and there must be a million things within the menus and the buttons on the cameras. So number one, that button right there, exposure mode. How do you want to combine aperture and shutter speed? Do you want fast shutter speed to freeze the action of wildlife running across your scene, or do you want great depth of focus in landscape photos by using f/22, small aperture? You want to be in control of that, so exposure mode dial number one. Number two, ISO. ISO is how much grain or pixelization, we call it these days, exists in the photograph. But if you have a low light and you're shooting wildlife in the evening, you may need 800 ISO and you get a little graininess, and we pay that price. But in landscape photos, typically we want a low number, like a 100, to have less grain in our neutral areas like skies. And then white balance is a digital thing that wasn't associated with film. That basically is the camera deciding what the color of light is. So if it's sunset, at the end of the day, it's red light. The camera tends to want to make it bluer. I tell people leave it on auto white balance, and if you want to make changes to the colors, you do that in what we call post-processing using programs like Lightroom.
When you have those available to you, that just helps everything, right? When you're able, and that's a whole different class, is being able to later fix them up on the
People
computer.
don't realize that good digital photography is half taking the picture in the first place with the camera and half fixing it, because the sensors don't see the way the eyes do. So we lighten the shadows, we darken the highlights, things like that to make an extraordinary photo. Not exaggerated, but the way the eye sees.
You host workshops, and you've got one coming up.
Crested Butte, we've got two-day workshops at the end of July. We've still got room in each, but they're going to be gone soon. Love to have people down there at that time of the year. The flowers are extraordinary.
Are you actually out in the field teaching people?
We do a lecture in the classroom, but then up till sunset, and then early at 5:30 in the morning for sunrise, we're out in the field making extraordinary photos. I let the students make better photos than what I make.
Wow, okay, how cool. I'd love to take one of those and learn from you, from the best. Thank you. Good to see you, John.
You're welcome.
And by the way, if you'd like more information, you can find that in the Daybreak section of our website, kwgn.com. You can also find the link to submit pictures for our Windows to Colorado on our website as well. Chris?
All right, Natalie. Well, taking a look at the weather. We'll start with the live camera up in the Salida area.